Hello, everyone. Just give us a second while I connect this on Instagram. Takes a little second to load up. Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another live. So today I'm joined by Stuart Watkins. I'm very excited to be having this conversation today. Stuart is a master yoga teacher and holistic life coach who synthesizes many different philosophies and teachings in his work, and included within that is the teachings of Ram Dass. And he's been really deeply connected with Ram Dass and his teachings for almost 20 years now. So as someone who really embodies the teachings in his everyday work and in his life. So I'd love if, Stu, you could start by introducing yourself and telling us how you discovered Ram Dass and what resonated so deeply about his teachings.
Sure. Well, you introduced me beautifully, so thank you. So I'll just jump straight to my relationship with Ram Dass. So my yoga journey would have began in the early 2000s, and just every now and then I would hear my teachers talk about Ram Dass, and it was just in my peripheral awareness. And then I'll never forget 2007, I'm pretty sure it would have been then, where there was just a shift in how I was hearing his teaching. So before then, I had read Be Here Now, which you should all read, and I found it interesting, but I wasn't quite getting it, and would look up lectures of him and videos and whatnot, and appreciated him and what he had to say, but it didn't quite like impact me. It's like but then in 2007 it landed differently. I don't know, it must have just been where I was at. It felt like almost like the feeling of falling in love, and I just became obsessed with him. Obsessed, reading every book multiple times of his, listening to all of his lectures multiple times, like countless times. And then it would have been 2000, yeah, a couple years later, 2009-ish, I reached out to him and his crew, just voicing that I'm an avid student and love his work. Like, would he be willing to work with me one-on-one? And he was open to it, and his crew were open to it. So we just started connecting like this, one-on-one. And then as soon as I had the opportunity to get over to Maui, which is where he's living, which you just were, I would just retreat with him and his crew as often as I could, and then would start going with the family and Joe, and we would all go together, and it just became my life. And then we eventually were there so much on Maui that we moved there for a few years, and he married Joe and I, and it was just a beautiful, magical time where I feel it felt like a really blessed time where I had such good fortune and such good karma to just be lined up with him during that really special time. And since he passed away, as much as I miss those times and miss him in his body, it truly is living on. Like it's almost like the love and respect I have for him has gotten even deeper, and the teachings have gotten even deeper. So I could just keep reminiscing and talking about him and those times, but that's how it all briefly unfolded. But yeah, feel free to tease that apart. But yeah, very, very grateful.
Beautiful. Yeah. And is there, which of his teachings, is there specific teachings, or what changed in your life the most
Mm.
after you met him?
You know what? I think it was his humanness and his like the love and the bliss was palpable. It was a
Mm,
true transmission of big cosmic love. But at the same time, he was just a dude. He was just a funny, laid back dude that wasn't taking himself too seriously. And I think
mm,
I had just had quite a few teachers before that and peers and fellow teachers that were taking themselves too seriously and taking the
mm,
practice of yoga too seriously. And then I met Ram Dass and I was like, oh fuck, we can keep a sense of humor with all of this. This is
mm-hmm,
it. And yeah, it was just so
mm-hmm,
refreshing to have someone so awake and so in love and so yeah, wise, yet not taking it seriously. I was like, oh,
mm-hmm.
it was a big light bulb moment, a big opening of my heart. And yeah, it was just life changing.
Yeah, yeah, I felt the same way when I we were in Hawaii in January. And yeah, I went there and went to his house, and he obviously wasn't there, but the energy was just so incredible. And then I started exploring his teachings a little bit, and that humanness that he brings in is so beautiful. And that's, what we do a lot in Tantra. It's combining the 5D and this human experience. And yeah, I love the way that he combines those as well.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, so his humanness, and then the practice he would always come back to was, I am loving awareness. That was it.
Hmm.
Love, love and serve everyone. It all got distilled into what seemed like very simple teachings.
Hmm.
But you actually, when you dig deep into it, it's kind of everything.
Hmm.
So, and
Yeah.
that's the practice of bhakti yoga, is to truly bring that devotion into, not just when we're chanting, like people often confuse bhakti as just the practice of chanting, which that's a beautiful part of it, but
Hmm.
it's really that devotion of bringing that loving awareness into every day. And that's the main teaching, what it came down to, of
Hmm.
being love, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it is, like you said, so simple, but when you start to come back to that in moments of, conflict, or when something's going wrong, you just come back, I am loving awareness. And it's like, does it all really matter? Probably not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, the amount of people I've met that when I bring that into a practice or reminisce on that teaching, a lot of people literally like cringe at it and have a real like
Okay.
almost like an allergic reaction to it, of which is so interesting.
Mm.
Um,
Why do you think that
yeah,
is?
I think many of us have a muddled up, confusing, probably even traumatic um, relationship with love. And it is primarily romantic and polarizing, and rarely ever is it actually true love.
Hmm.
So tangled in the word of love is the opposite of what we think love is, and hate and resentment. And so that's still this realm of dualistic love, romantic love, but what this is digging deeper into is like the core of our heart love that is unshakable, transcendent, you know? So it's always interesting playing with it because, as you know, in Tantra, we're merging the 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 relative with the ultimate. We're merging our unshakable ultimate self, capital S, with the small self that is very fragile. You know, so most of us have only experienced a type of love that is very fragile, very vulnerable, which is beautiful. We can learn to really appreciate that. It's really beautiful. But as we keep opening our heart, like our spiritual heart, we get tastes and access into like big love, true love. And that to our ego, that's scary as fuck. That's scary stuff. Our thinking mind and our ego that thinks it's separate. It does everything it can do to distract us from that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, do you have what kind of supported you into discovering that love kind of within yourself and moving into more of that non-dual way of living?
Well, I do feel blessed as well that I have and was brought up with a very loving family. I think that helped and helps. Just that real, like that root chakra type feeling of stability and love. So I do feel like lucky and blessed to have had that because without a doubt, without that foundation, it's way trickier. It's harder. It's harder to feel confident and stable enough to open our hearts. So I think that, for starters, set the foundation to feel trusting and stable enough to open my heart. And then, interestingly, like as a teenager, I was really drawn to psychedelic experiences and drugs. And that was truly a big awakening time of just being a little teenager trying to work out what's going on in the world and what's going on in my changing body. And meanwhile, I'm smoking weed all day long and doing ecstasy on the weekends and going to raves and really expanding my awareness big time and seeing a lot of radical stuff like as a 13, 14, 15 year old. So I do look back and see that as a pivotal time of of awakening. And then come age 15, maybe 16, I actually had a overdose experience that just shook me to my core. And it really did feel like I was on the edge of dying. And after that, as a 15, 16-year-old, I was just in my dark room, really depressed, really just had everything knocked out of me. It was kind of like this rebuilding of self. And I came back like a different person, like really healthy, really. And so I went from like pre this whole thing, I went as like a skinny, gothic looking, pale raver that, yeah, to like,
The gothic pale raver.
yeah. So I was even dyeing my hair black and was right into it. Unrecognizable. And then after I forget how long, but it was a little while in my dark room. I don't think I was even playing music, just like nothing. It was really quite an interesting time, and eventually came out of it and became obsessed with lots of motivational stuff like Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer and even bodybuilding type stuff, and just got really healthy and fit and focused and inspired. And it was quite interesting coming back from that really dark place into a really like light, motivated, positive space. As
Mm,
still as a developing teenager, So
mm,
that I I can't help but feel that was a huge, huge part of like what Ramdas would call fierce grace. Like, we all know like and hope for like beautiful, like loving grace. But this was like fierce grace that just knocked the shit out of me and then had to rebuild things. And
mm.
I'm really grateful for that time. It was a powerful time.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I didn't go through the pale gothic phase so much, but I definitely had, definitely had my time with, drugs and different psychedelic experiences. And yeah, I had one in particular that the first time I took mushrooms just absolutely changed my life completely in that one day. And yeah, it went into so much darkness and it just went intense. And then, through that, I expanded so much more than I had been in so many years. So I think they definitely play a really beautiful role in, spiritual journey at times and different.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'd love to know your opinion now on, psychedelics in relation to someone's spiritual journey and how they can kind of go about them with more of a reverence rather than just looking
Mhm.
for these peak experiences that are then, there and then gone and nothing really stays.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they totally have their place. And I do think it's an exciting time for psychedelics in the world. Like we've come a long way from the kind of heyday of psychedelics in the 60s and 70s, and then the dark ages of psychedelics with the war on drugs. And they're re-emerging with more intelligence and more reverence and more um, information. We're much more informed as to how to do it well this time around. And I think it can be done really well.
Mm,
Um, you know, the plant medicines have really been a pivotal part of my life, and truly some of the peak experiences I've had with ayahuasca uh, truly opened up my life to what it is today. Like,
mm,
like truly visionary and opening and strengthening. And they have a beautiful way of recalibrating our mind and our nervous system and overriding our thinking mind and our ego constructs, and just have a beautiful way of opening us up, whether we want to or not, whether we're ready or not, you
mm,
know.
yeah.
So I have deep respect for psychedelics, and in particular the plant medicine teachers. Yeah, which when we consume these plant medicine teachers with the right set and setting, it's like sitting with a true guru. It's like
Mm-hmm.
sitting with Christ consciousness. It's like sitting with God. Um,
Mm,
but it truly is about set and setting. It's not
mm-hmm.
just about smashing it down and it'll happen.
Mm,
No, it's a real like we got to show respect, and we got to open up the space for that. Similar to if we're, like when we'd go meet with Ram Dass, it would in unless because often we would meet him and just be swimming in the ocean or something like that. And but if we were going with him to like meditate or just chat, like you prepare yourself to be with the master, to be with the guru, and you wash yourself and you get in clean clothes and you get ready.
mm-hmm.
Similar with the plant medicine journey, you get ready. You do
Mm,
the dieta, the diet, and you prepare your body, and Maybe you bathe and you cleanse, and it's like, all right, here we go. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, it scares the shit out of me still because it's so powerful and
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. But I love it. It's helped me a lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, what I experienced quite a bit with my friends, I mean, I am still young, but, when I was younger and we would do plant medicines together, and I grew up with mum, so I kind of had already had different parts of my brain open to these different things, and they would go into this thinking, oh, it's going to be a fun thing, and then it completely cracks them open like they've never been cracked open before, and suddenly their emotions are there and everything's at the surface, and they resist it because it's scary and it's so unknown to them. And so then that resistance just creates a lot of suffering during the trip. And, a
Yeah.
lot of my friends would just go into this hole of inner turmoil. And so I think it's so important to, before you do psychedelics or whatever kind of plant medicine, to be able to kind of reach those states, not fully, of course, because it's altering your brain, but to be able to reach that state within yourself beforehand and to be able to
Yeah.
access those things. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I've seen the same thing. And it feels very important to have some kind of practice, whether that's yoga or tantra or qigong or martial arts or some kind of embodiment practice to
Mhm.
work with the sensations going on in the body, the shifts of consciousness. I
Mhm.
have seen it be problematic when people taking psychedelics don't have any other practice, even therapy,
Mhm. Mhm.
psychotherapy. I'm seeing a lot of great work with, psychotherapists, psychologists, even psychiatrists, utilizing plant medicines really well with their talk therapy. And they'll
Mm.
do a bunch of sessions, and then it's like lead up for the ceremony.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Mhm.
Like really preparing the mind, preparing the body. And then when you have it, you can really work with it with much more agency, much more mastery, rather than just, the freak out, because
Mhm.
it's freaky shit. So
Mhm.
I think the freak out is fine. It's good for us to freak out every now and then and
Mm.
get our ass kicked and get a little bit scared because it's a big, wide universe, and we can get very complacent and very self-obsessed in our
Mm.
world, and it just shakes it loose and
Mm.
shows us how big it all actually is.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, do you want to maybe speak into a little bit more your own personal practice, and then
Mhm.
what your work looks like a little bit, and what you kind of
Sure.
bringing into that? Yeah.
Mm. I mean, it'll sound a bit like crazy actually. I do a lot of different things. It's my life,
Mhm.
So it's like, how much detail do you want me to go into?
I mean, look, we've got time, as much
Okay.
detail as you feel
All
to go
right.
into.
So I've got a real priority of um, tuning into the sun, tuning into the
Mm.
sun. So getting that sunrising light into my eyes, into my brain, into my nervous system, while my feet is on the earth, or as much skin is on the earth. So these two things are my like foundation for a great day and a
Mm.
great night, is
Mm.
tuning into the sunrise and tuning into the sunset. And if
Mm.
if possible, getting that through my eyes into my body. And often with that, I'm doing a practice called Agni Hotra, which is a little fire ceremony, which does tune in to that timing of sunrise and sunset. And it's a beautiful, just simple little practice to not only cultivate inner purification and clarity and devotion, but it's proven to actually create this like spreading of good energy, not just from the devotional aspect and the mantra and our good vibes, but also just the actual electromagnetic frequency of this little copper fire pit with the cow poo and the ghee and the rice, this little fusion of what creates the fire in combination with the sunrise, the sunset, and the mantra. Um, I like to believe it's spreading good vibes. It's definitely not spreading bad vibes. So I love to do that. So tuning into light, tuning into that practice. Hydrating the body goes with all that, just waking up and hydrating the body. A supplement, if you're going to have like one supplement, I would say methylene blue is the shit. Having that in combination with healthy light exposure, whether that's sunrise, sunset, or like red light therapy, it's a game changer. It's really
What
good
is it?
stuff. It is literally ink.
Okay.
It is ink.
Okay.
It used to be used to dye denim jeans, and then it was
Okay.
yeah. It's strange. It took me a long time to wrap my head around it, but interestingly, it's actually coming out into more of a like almost mainstream awareness, and it's been it's been around a long time. Even doctors have it on hand, paramedics have it on hand. If someone is having a seizure or a fit or some kind of episode, often that is pulled out and people have it. But now it's being shown that it's actually really good for the brain, really good for our cells and our mitochondria, and just
Right.
helps it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I can recommend a couple of really good books that go deep into it because it's quite a mystery, but it's also quite a miracle elixir that it seems almost it makes sense why maybe big pharma has kept it just unheard of because it's very therapeutic, and it's being shown that it can really help with like ADHD and even like more serious neurodegenerative diseases. That's really good for the brain, really good for our nervous system. Your mum's onto it, and Matisse, they're both onto it.
Okay.
I talked about it with them a couple months ago, and they bought some, and they do it with the red light,
Yeah.
and so it's good stuff. So that's like the morning, fire, light, water. So you can distill it down to like light, magnetism, uh, elevating our frequency,
Beautiful.
and it's just once you get into the groove of it, very just simple yet like purifying in the zone. And then it just steamrolls from that of so I'll do a few sessions a day with private clients, and with that I'm in this seated position breathing with them and working with them and incorporating different uh, pranayama and mantra and contemplations and sound healing. So I'm just kind of bathing in it all day. So for me, what I've got to look out for, and I know probably some of you are also teachers or practitioners or doing similar work. simple things for me just to re-ground after all that, just literally feet on the earth or sitting up against a tree and come back to the body again and again and again. Because I've definitely learned that the hard way, I think, with all of this work. Had a tendency to just get too light. And it actually, as good as it feels and as transcendent as it feels, I just started to see that it's actually not functional and not actually very grounded. I would start to notice that I wasn't very as present as I was in one way. I wasn't actually very present with like relationships. So I was like, fuck, like as a dad and as a husband and a householder, I got to ground on down. I got to be present because staying up here in outer space isn't gonna help anyone. Not not in this reality anyway. Not in this reality. So grounding is very important as many times as I can. Just as much skin on the earth as possible. Bit of sunlight is huge. And then yeah, there's lots of other modalities. I mean, even just the analog practice of just writing with an actual pen or pencil, getting off the phone and actually just writing, I find incredibly therapeutic, or actually reading a solid book. So stuff like that, I find helps me just ground in this kind of zoo we're in of technology and non-native EMFs from our phones and computers and whatnot, and just reconnect. But
That's so
there's many,
brilliant.
many, many, many more things I add into the day that I could get into, but that'll just be boring. But that's like that's the foundation, is what I just
It's
lay
a
down.
great foundation. Yeah, so unique as well. I haven't really heard many people start their day like that. That's great.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to talk a little bit about shadow work. You know, you're speaking about you kind of polarized in the light a little bit. I'd love for you to speak into your journey with shadow work and what role that plays.
Sure. Yeah, well, I've had plenty of shadow work experiences with the psychedelics, without a doubt.
And maybe,
Just
sorry, as well, for people that
yeah.
don't know, do you want to just explain what shadow work is to you?
So yeah, there are a few ways to look at shadow work, but so places within our psyche and our interactions with the world that are unresolved, unhealed, unconscious. You know, so these blind spots and shadows that, for so many of us, we're not even aware of them. It's actually unconscious.
Yeah.
So the shadow work initially is to make what is unconscious conscious, which that can be really challenging. It takes so much patience and humility to do authentic shadow work. But the Buddhist practice of witnessing can really help. So what's tricky if we're new to it is we start to familiarize with our shadow and our blind spots, and we, if done in an unskilled way, we take it personally and we freak out, or we do the classic spiritual bypass, which is what I kept seeing in yoga as well. There's a yogic practice called nete, which is not this, not that, in which it is an effective way of getting in touch with like our heart and our spirit, but it's also an effective way to spiritually bypass. So I was getting very, very good at that, just spiritually bypassing everything and just, and it was blissful. It was a great time of just, no, I'm not this, no, I'm not that, no, I'm not my body, no, I'm not my thoughts, no, I'm not even my shadow. I'm none of this. I am loving awareness. So that's cool. We want to get in touch with that. But then there's bringing that witness and that loving awareness into the murkier parts of our shadow. And what has helped me is to tap into, I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. Actually looking at my shadow from love. And
Such
then,
a brilliant
yeah,
point there.
yeah, then it's all good, then it's almost like holding your child that you love unconditionally, even if they're being a little shit, and just like, no, I got you. I love you, whatever. We can tap into that big love and do our shadow work from there. From what I've found, if I'm just trying to do shadow work from my ego, it's pretty limited. It's pretty limited. I mean, maybe like 100 hours, if not 10,000 hours of doing that, we might finally start to penetrate into some deep healing. But for the most part, it seems we need some kind of either somatic practice or some kind of tantric practice or the usage of psychedelics with psychotherapy, or a sophisticated yogic practice where we are kind of, you could say, opening up the central channel and being able to see things, you could say, like more objectively, like just seeing them as they actually are helps. Otherwise, it can take a long, long time getting anywhere with shadow work when we're just thinking about it. Oh, it's a bore, it's a drag. Yeah, so we got to get the energy moving. We got to even have community, have satsang, have sangha, in which we're not just like obsessed with ourself, because shadow work very quickly can become quite narcissistic and self-obsessive, and we just end up like obsessed with ourselves. And this is why, and I mean, yeah, it's funny, like it almost is funny, like, and that's why Neem Curly Baba, Ram Dass's guru, when his students, including Ram Dass, would come to him of like, give me a practice, give me something, like he would always tell them like, love and serve, like go and feed people, go and feed people. So that feels important if we're just like shadow work, like just focusing on ourself without any other modalities. I would say, like, I don't know, go and volunteer or go and do some gardening or something like that, just to like give your mind a break and then come back to it and All right. Okay, let's go in and check it out again. Does that make sense? Any of that?
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. And I totally what you're saying about, getting out of the mind is so important, and the loving it as well. And I think, I had done shadow work at like retreats and kind of guided practices, but I was very in my mind, and I was trying to like work my way through it in my mind and like, oh, what's happening now, blah blah blah. And then I had an experience at the end of the year where I was going through a pretty intense time with my partner, and we had a conflict. And he said, "Look, I need to leave you. I think you need to do your practice, and I just like you need to work through this on yourself," because I was really spiraling, and him being there wasn't making it better. And I just completely lost it. I just was in turmoil on the ground, screaming, throwing a literal tantrum. And what followed was the most intense and also like true shadow work practice I've ever done. And I ended up in front of the mirror, and I met this part of myself that felt abandoned by myself. And there's always a message or a lesson and something that the shadow is needing and wanting to be integrated in. And so yeah, it was just to experience that when I was coming at it from this place of like, there wasn't really any mind, there was just intense feeling in my body, and like the rest dropped
Mm.
away. And then, yeah, it was definitely a much more potent experience than any of the other times I had had.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that is a beautiful thing to do. Just a bit of literal like reflection work, shadow work, like in the
Mm,
mirror, you know,
mm-hmm,
and just even the eye meditation, the soul gazing meditation, like just spending a nice amount of time looking
mm,
right into your own eye, like just
mm,
yeah, work with all that reactivity through the body, all of that, and then see if you can discharge all that energy and just dive deep into love. And then
mm.
all of
Yeah.
that just stuff legitimately gets like alchemized and transmuted, and there's more legitimate love pouring through the body, you know.
Mm,
But even that's
mm,
it's hard. It's hard, you know, when we've been triggered and there's all that energy through the
mm,
body. We got to be patient with ourselves, getting that shift and authentically coming back to clarity and love. It can
mm,
take time, you know, and I think
mm,
um, we we're in a rush. We want to like these
mm,
teachings and these experiences. You know, we want it now because everything's so immediate now, you know, like we got psychedelics that can give us a direct experience now. We got our phone that's constantly giving us dopamine hits now, and it's all now, and time's kind of quickening.
mm-hmm,
But these deep shifts of growth and development and um, authentic awakening, it actually
mm.
does take time. You
Oh
know,
yeah, absolutely.
it takes a bit
Mm-hmm.
of time.
Yeah, and and it's not. It's like it's so
Yeah.
fucking hard, and there's a lot of times when it's like you. I have been through. You know, you think, okay, I'm going to do this next time, and then when you're actually in the moment where there's that opportunity to bring it in, and everything that you've been learning, and it just out the
Yeah.
door. And it's not going to happen straight away. You're learning all this, and then the embodiment slowly comes. And I had, it had all been a big build up to that moment of me needing to just meet that part of myself that was abandoning myself. And it wasn't like I just ended up there and there we go. It was a lot of different instances that had been really uncomfortable and painful, and then ended in
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. So in
Mm.
yoga, there's some really cool like maps of the subtle body um, that include samskaras and grunties, and you could think of them as like knots in our spiritual energy from
Mm.
some of it's from our ancestors and just what's been handed down through ancestry and the conditioned mind, and some of it's through trauma and through just learned behaviors in our environment. And each time we get the opportunity to do that shadow work, it's kind of like we are untying these knots through our circuitry. And with practice, there's more access for prana to flow. And that's when we become more whole and more able to love fully. So, like, it becomes like each time we're triggered, it's almost like rather than fuck, here I am again, fucking triggered again. I was on my A game and I thought I had my shit together. It can be like, all right, sweet, we've still got some work to do. All right, let's go deeper. Let's go deeper, and it's all good, because that can be a very thick trap. Is that like when we get to a new, you could say, a new state, a new trait, a new feeling of well-being and freedom, we can think like, all right, I'm done, I'm good, and it's beautiful, and it's something to rejoice in and be grateful for, and not to anticipate that it's gonna get gnarly again, but you know, from birth, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that continues, especially if we are doing things to welcome growth and development and awakening. It's going to be a couple steps forward, and then maybe quite a few steps back, and that can be thick and that can be challenging, but buckle in, do the mirror work, do the inner work, feed people, do some gardening. You know, like
some gardening.
get our hands dirty. You know, we can. Coming back to practical things, I think is good for us. It can really help quiet the mind and heal our situation very organically.
Yeah. Oh, gardening is one of my
So
favorite
good.
things to do when I'm going through
And you
it.
love
Yeah, it's like
horses. I mean, being around animals. I mean, we got to do more of that. You know, and that's part of like tuning into sunrise and sunset, being with animals, getting on the earth, doing some gardening. I mean, it can. We'll, you know, doing the deeper kind of psychological and energetic stuff. Yes, and get back to nature. You know.
Yeah, I think, having that ability to determine right now, okay, do I need to sit with this and do I need to go deep, or do I just need to get out in the sunlight and do some gardening?
Yeah.
And you're going to mess it up and do the wrong thing and whatever, but you do eventually learn, like, okay, right now what I actually need is not to go into this whole thing. I just need to go out and do some gardening, and then it naturally, like you said, resolves itself.
Yeah, so that's where the discernment piece really comes in, because it's tricky. It's tricky for us to be able to discern what to do. Because naturally in our biology, we will lean more towards what's most comfortable and pleasing. That's why we've got a whole realm of seeking pleasure, but not even in, as you know, not even like the real pleasure, just like this temporary surface pleasure of distraction. So that's why classically in these wisdom practices, we've got our teacher, you know, that we trust, which is kind of like having a best friend that we really trust, and they can call us out on our bullshit, but they do it with love. and it's all good. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the guru. That's a really good teacher that can say it as it is and kind of
Mm-hmm.
prescribe what to do. Like, yeah, okay, you
Mm-hmm.
want to go like, eat a bowl of ice cream,
Oh.
but maybe not. It's time to.
Maybe.
So we can develop that skill of discernment and make smart choices, but
Mm,
even that takes time. Like that's a tricky one. We can
mm,
very easily delude ourselves, that trap of self-delusion.
mm,
So refining that that lens of witnessing, of discerning,
mhm,
that's an interesting one as well.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think just, like you said, with the surrendering to the whole process of you're going to make progress and then you're going
Yeah.
to go back. And it's the same goes with this, you're going to make progress and then you're going to go back, and just surrendering to it all without resistance to, oh, for fuck's sake, I fucked it up. Like, getting stuck in that
Yeah.
whole thing, just really like witnessing the experience and surrendering to what is present instead of beating
Yeah.
yourself up.
And then like I get flashbacks of the amount of times I've heard real masters. Ram Dass would often say it, Maharaji would often say it, Thich Nhat Hanh, these great, just obviously very, very enlightened masters. Like when someone's really stressed and really like in a crisis mode or really beating themselves up, really disappointed in themselves, they pretty much always come back to like, you can't go wrong. Like you just, it's a much bigger picture than what you can currently see. And I know that can lead to a spiritual bypass. Like, oh no, it's all just love and light. And there's no cause and effect, and you can do no wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not quite that. Like, because someone could
Mm-hmm.
easily use one of those spiritual truths of like, you can't go wrong. It's all
Mm-hmm.
perfect. And it can be a
Mm-hmm.
total cop out from this person over here or from me. But then you hear like Thich Nhat Hanh or Ram Dass or one of these great beings say it. Oh, yeah, shit. Like, it's such
Mm-hmm.
a big picture. And this
Mm-hmm.
small thing right here, it's so
Mm.
insignificant. I am so
Mm-hmm.
insignificant. so, so,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
on this path, we can really get caught up in like, again, this narcissistic trap and really feed into our specialness in a very shadowy way, in a very like kind of childlike way that it feel like
Mm-hmm.
like I'm I'm special, but but like it feels very insecure. Like
Mm-hmm.
in that specialness or that neediness, it's very insecure. And that's natural. That's
Yeah.
natural. But um, this zooming out into the bigger picture can show,
Mm-hmm.
kind of similar to a psychedelic experience, can show actually how insignificant we actually are. But when that's
Mm.
integrated, we can actually come out the other side even more confident, even more fearless,
Mm-hmm.
even more passionate, because we're no longer taking ourselves so fucking seriously, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we
Yeah.
feel like I'm special and we take ourselves so seriously and we're so fragile and
Mm-hmm.
taking things so personally. So whenever I hear it of like, it's all good, like, and I mean, they're looking at it in the big picture of like, fuck it. If you don't get it this lifetime, you'll get it. Maybe you'll get it next lifetime. Or the like, There's no rush.
Mhm. Yeah.
And what it seems when we can have that big perspective combined with, okay, well, there's no rush. At the same time, what's holding me back? Like, why not just leap in now? It
Mhm.
seems to
Mhm.
bring about a real courage and like trust. Mm.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree in that ability to, zoom out and see the bigger picture, and that doesn't necessarily mean that your experience is, not
Yeah.
worthy or whatever, and you're still experiencing it, but it gives you that ability to just see, okay, I don't need to actually, the whole world isn't ending, and it's okay that I'm
Right.
feeling this, but also maybe I'm going a little bit over the top, and it's all
Oh,
good.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and that's hard. Like I definitely have gone into that, and I kind of went through, growing up with mum, I resisted it in my teenage years, and I really pushed all the emotions away. And then I had a mushroom sit when I was 18, which really opened me to everything again. And then I went the opposite, and I also had a partner for the first time who I met maybe a year after that. And I just went into everything, and I would just start spiraling on like nothing. And the feeling completely overtook me. And yeah, definitely being in Hawaii and rum dust made me think about this and other things as well. But yeah, that ability to zoom out and not be so focused on my little experience of like this one thing that went wrong that's now spiraled into a whole death.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
wild, huh?
Yeah.
Like the nervous
Mm,
system and the mind and the brain. It's so trippy, really, in
mm,
how convincing it is, how strong it is, and it's
mm-hmm,
seductive. But you know, so is the nightmare. Like when we're in a nightmare, it feels it
mm-hmm,
feels just as real as a nightmarish situation here, you know. And so having that awareness training to just watch it um,
mm,
helps us to cultivate more insight and wisdom.
mm-hmm,
Otherwise, if the nervous system is dictating everything, oh, it's just it's
mm,
it's a big old mess. It's a big old melodrama.
yeah,
So yeah, thank goodness to have, conversation, practices, things available to
mm,
tune, like literally tune the nervous system. So then we've got
mm-hmm,
more agency when it fires up and takes
mm-hmm,
the front line. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, and having that, you know, I you could say I went really into the unhealthy feminine with the overexpression of the emotion and stuff, and really bringing in that witness and like the
Mhm.
masculine presence in myself, and having, balancing both of those
Right.
within the masculine and the feminine. It just completely was so amazing to do that, and to just start to really prioritize, because I was going so into my emotions, to then prioritize just as much as that the stillness and
Mm.
the witness, because I wasn't, and it was leading to a lot of drama.
Yeah, that the feminine is wild in that state. I mean, and it's beautiful. Like it's
Mm,
beautiful, like nature, like the weather. I mean, you can kind of forecast the weather, but
mhm.
they're still fucking up the weather forecast. We never, and that's the feminine. You never know what on that level. You never know what you're gonna get. You never know what you're gonna get. And
Yeah.
living in a house with three females,
Mm,
it's a trip. It's a trip seeing the
mhm,
fluctuations of the female form. It's so
mhm,
beautiful, but it's
mhm,
it's trippy. It's
mm,
the weather at play, sunshiny and beautiful and kind, and then fiery and volatile. Um, but
mm,
then there's just the blue sky, always there, just hanging out. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
witness, and
Mm.
that's the Shiva, that's the foreground of nothingness that can hold it all, you know, and that's why we need just um, yeah, connecting with stillness, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As powerful and beautiful as the kriyas are, and express and release techniques and chanting and moving energy in a very dynamic way, there's also something
Mm.
really necessary in having just a
Mm.
upright stillness practice that over
Yeah.
time it really does fortify the clarity needed to hold space for all the fluctuations. Ram Dass would
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot
Yeah.
about being a loving rock, because a big chapter of his life's work was working with dying people. And he's like, and before psychedelics and before the Ram Dass that we love and know, he was a psychologist and a professor at Harvard of psychology. So he had all the psychological framework down, and could talk beautifully and had all the things to say. And for those of you that listen to his lectures, know that he speaks so beautifully, spoke so beautifully. But he said, my work when I'm with someone dying is not to say the right thing and to force wisdom down their ears. He said, it's just to be a loving rock. So as
Mm.
they're writhing in pain and as they're scared, as they shift consciousness and they're going through the dying process, as he's just there doing his Ram, 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 Ram. And these are from him actually, they're mala beads from him. And he'd be going through the practice of japa, just through each bead, chanting. Oh, and his go to mantra was Ram, 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 Ram. Or I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. And so he would talk
Mm-hmm.
about, like, yes, as he's sitting there, stuff is coming up and he's getting repulsed or bored or triggered or whatever. He's human still and he's
Mm-hmm.
having reactions. And he's like,
Mm.
all right, Ram, 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 Ram. And it's his way of transmuting what's coming up, alchemizing it back to love, back to love, back to love, back to love, and being a loving rock. I mean,
Mm.
it's huge, you know, which we can apply to anything, whether it's one of those situations in a like volatile conversation or argument or whatever. Like, how quick can we almost like, yeah, like do the shadow work then and there? Like, whew, that was totally unconscious, and like, whoop, ram, ram, ram. Okay, back to love, and like say what's up, say it as
Mm-hmm.
it is, you know. But when our nervous
Mm.
system is that fired up, often we're not actually saying it how it is. We're saying something completely unconscious. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, back to love. All right, now we can have an actual conversation, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
so that has stuck. This practice of being a loving rock, like when my
Mm.
prepubescent daughter is just grumpy, and it helps me to see that for what it is, you know, even though she's
Mm.
being totally an asshole and disrespectful. um, like to not take it personally and like, oh, I got you,
Mm-hmm.
sweetie. Like, and from
Mm.
that place, we can also speak up with like a level of assertion if necessary, you know, like because often people
Mm-hmm.
confuse like when one is in a state of love and light, it's all just fluffy and beautiful talk, but no, sometimes the most loving thing we can do in that time is to like tough love, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So from that place of
Yeah.
Ram, 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 God, 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 a loving awareness, we just
Mm-hmm.
tend to be more clear as to what the right action in that moment is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I definitely, as a woman who has been in those states where you just have no head, having your partner in this instance, trying to fix the situation or guide you through it or whatever, it's barely ever what we need. And usually, like you said, having that just loving presence and that rock that's just like there to witness and be present with us and hold us is gonna make the situation better 99% of the time, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, even like
Mm-hmm.
being able to tell that your partner or whoever, your friend, whoever's there is actually listening, like
Mm-hmm.
actually listening is so therapeutic. But
Mm-hmm.
so often, if we're not like a loving presence, we're not actually listening. We're
Mm-hmm.
preoccupied with either something else or what we're going to say next or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So actually
Yeah.
listening it's a beautiful energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, when you are truly listened to, often then the deeper truth
Mhm.
can come out because you feel that deep
Totally.
listening. Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
beautiful. Well, it's been an
Yeah.
hour, so we should probably cut it there, but that was amazing. I so
Yeah,
enjoyed
you
talking
too,
to you.
Sadell. Good work. I love it. I'm very impressed. How old are you again?
Thank you.
Yeah, you are
21.
rocking it. It's so cool. Yeah.
Thanks. All right, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. I will see you for the next live. Thank you for joining
Thanks,
us,
Sadell.
Stu.